Evaluating pitching prospects might be the hardest problem in baseball. For every top-ranked arm that becomes an ace, there are dozens that stall out, get hurt, or simply never figure it out at the major league level. Two pitchers can boast comparable ERAs at the minor league level and end up on completely different career paths. So the question is, when we look at minor league pitchers, what actually matters and what is just noise? This video is the second in a two-part statistical analysis of how to evaluate prospects, with the first one focusing on hitters. If you haven't seen that one, make sure to watch that after this video. Like the previous video, this one uses historical minor league data to explore which statistics are the most predictive of major league success, this time for pitchers. This isn't meant to be a definitive model for evaluating prospects, but rather a way to give baseball fans a better sense of which numbers are actually worth paying attention to when tracking pitcher development. We'll start by examining a group of 125 pitchers whose careers primarily fall in the 2020s, using their AA performances to see which metrics meaningfully translate to MLB outcomes. From there, we'll shift to a smaller Statcast-based sample of 50 pitchers who have thrown at least 45 innings in both AAA and the majors since 2023, the seasons for which minor league Statcast data is available. In that section, we'll also introduce a stat that I've developed that I think deserves consideration when evaluating pitching prospects. As with the hitter analysis, this study comes with the same issue of survivorship bias. Every pitcher in these datasets eventually reach the major leagues, even though only about 10% of minor leaguers ever do. That means that we're excluding the vast majority of players who never make it that far. But the goal here isn't to predict who will reach the majors, it's to understand why some pitchers who do make it become effective major leaguers while others struggle. Even within this already successful group, outcomes vary widely. The Statcast portion of the analysis also comes with a limited sample size. Prospect Savant only includes 50 pitchers under the age of 25 who met the 45-inning threshold in both AAA and MLB. While that limits how rigorous we can be, the goal isn't to build a perfect model. It's to use the data that is available to draw reasonable inferences about pitcher development. Finally, as in the previous video, I'll apply these findings to a handful of under-the-radar minor leaguers who aren't currently viewed as top prospects, but who I think have a real chance to climb prospect rankings or even eventually carve out a role in the majors. Let's start with the AA analysis. This dataset gives us a much larger sample, but is limited to traditional and advanced statistics since Statcast data isn't available at the AA level. When we compare AA ERA and FIP to pitchers' MLB averages of the 2020s, neither metric shows a statistically significant relationship with major league performance. That isn't particularly surprising. However, it's worth noting that in the hitter analysis, AA WRC+ and WOBA were statistically significant predictors of MLB performance, even with relatively low R-squared values. This contrast highlights how evaluating minor league pitching prospects is generally more difficult than evaluating hitters. Turning to WHIP and batting average against, both AA metrics do show statistically significant relationships with their MLB counterparts. That said, the relationships are weak, particularly for WHIP, as reflected by the low R-squared values. Turning to batted ball data, AA ground ball rate and fly ball rate both have statistically significant relationships with their MLB equivalents and each show a moderately strong R-squared. Line drive rate, on the other hand, does not significantly carry over from AA to MLB. When we examine how MLB batted ball metrics relate to ERA, only line drive rate shows a statistically significant relationship, and even that relationship is quite weak. As a result, despite the apparent stability of ground ball and fly ball tendencies across levels, these metrics aren't especially useful for predicting pitcher success. Outcome-based statistics tell a more encouraging story. AA walk rate, strikeout rate, and strikeout-minus-walk rate all show statistically significant relationships with their MLB counterparts. Of the three, walk rate is the strongest relationship, while strikeout-minus-walk rate is the weakest. While none of the R-squared values are particularly large, they still point to metrics that are meaningfully informative when evaluating pitchers on the AA level. Of course, these tendencies are far from fixed. The scatter plots for strikeout rate and strikeout-minus-walk rate include pitchers like Tyler Glasnow, Spencer Strider, and Cole Reagans, who dramatically outperform what their AA numbers would have predicted. On the other end of the spectrum, a pitcher like Reed Detmers failed to miss bats at the major league level at the rate his AA profile would suggest. Even so, these metrics exhibit far less variability from AA to MLB than most of the other statistics we examined, making them some of the most reliable indicators we can extract from AA performance. Let's now move to the AAA Statcast analysis. In this section, we'll examine pitchers listed on Prospect Savant who threw at least 45 innings in AAA between 2023 and 2025, seasons for which Statcast data is available, and at least 45 innings in the major leagues. It's important to be clear about the limitations here. A sample of just 50 pitchers, along with a 45-inning threshold, is not large enough to draw definitive conclusions about long-term MLB success. However, given the constraints of minor league Statcast availability on Prospect Savant, this represents a reasonable balance between sample size and data quality. As long as we keep those limitations in mind, the analysis can still help us approximate which skills translate most immediately from AAA to the major leagues. We'll begin with quality of contact metrics. Recall that in the hitter analysis, hard hit rate, barrel rate, and average exit velocity were among the most informative statistics for evaluating prospects. For pitchers, average exit velocity allowed and barrel rate against do show statistically significant relationships between AAA and MLB performance, though both have relatively low R-squared values. Hard hit rate, however, shows no statistically significant relationship between AAA and its MLB equivalent. This result is intuitive. While quality of contact metrics are highly informative for evaluating hitters, they're less effective for evaluating pitchers across levels. Quality of contact acts as a selection mechanism for hitters advancing to MLB, meaning a pitcher at a higher level faces a more homogeneous group of strong contact hitters. As a result, variation in contact quality allowed reflects opponent quality more than a stable pitcher-specific skill. Now let's turn to plate discipline metrics. We'll start with O-swing percentage or chase rate, which measures the percentage of pitches outside the strike zone that hitters swing at. This is a valuable metric for pitchers, as swings on pitches out of the zone are more likely to result in misses or weak contact. When comparing AAA O-swing percentage to its MLB counterpart, we find a statistically significant relationship with an R-squared value of 0.343. Another useful metric is opponent zone contact percentage, or Z contact percentage, which measures how often hitters make contact on swings at pitches in the strike zone. For pitchers, lower Z contact percentage indicates an ability to miss bats even on strikes, largely reflecting pitch quality in terms of velocity and movement. Here again, we observe a statistically significant relationship between AAA and MLB performance. We see a similar result with swinging strike rate, which measures how often a pitcher induces a swing and miss. AAA swinging strike rate is also a statistically significant predictor of MLB swinging strike rate. The fact that all three of these metrics are statistically significant makes sense, as each captures an aspect of a pitcher's stuff. O-swing reflects deception, Z contact reflects in-zone dominance, and swinging strike rate more broadly reflects the ability to generate whiffs. Beyond their translation across levels, these metrics are also strongly related to major league success. Using a sample of 127 pitchers who threw at least 100 innings in 2025, O-swing percentage, Z contact percentage, and swinging strike rate are all statistically significant predictors of both ERA and FIP, with stronger relationships observed for FIP. This reinforces the idea that these plate discipline and stuff-related metrics are worth emphasizing when evaluating pitching prospects. In addition to these metrics, I developed a new stat that combines O-swing percentage and Z contact percentage. Many are familiar with the stat Seager, defined as Z swing percentage minus O swing percentage, which rewards hitters who swing at strikes while avoiding chase. For pitchers, however, the ideal profile is the opposite, inducing chase while limiting contact on strikes. To capture this, I created a simple metric that subtracts O swing percentage from Z contact percentage, where lower values are better. Looking at all pitchers with at least 100 innings pitched in 2025 at the major league level, Tariq's SKUBAL recorded the lowest value of this metric, so I named it SKUBAL. When examining pitchers with at least 100 innings pitched in 2025, SKUBAL is a significant predictor of both ERA and FIP, with again a stronger relationship to FIP. Notably, SKUBAL is more statistically significant for FIP than either O-swing percentage or Z contact percentage on their own, suggesting that it provides an additional meaningful signal rather than simply just providing noise. Returning to the AAA analysis, we also find a statistically significant relationship between AAA SKUBAL and MLB SKUBAL. In fact, among all AAA metrics examined, this relationship is the strongest. Given its consistency across levels and its strong association with MLB run prevention, particularly FIP, SKUBAL appears to be a useful tool for evaluating AAA pitching prospects. Now that we have a clear sense of what actually matters when evaluating pitching prospects, let's put that framework into practice. Using Prospect Savant, I searched for players who consistently posted high O-swing percentages, low Z contact percentages, while also paying attention to strikeout rate and walk rate. Like in the hitter video, I identified 4 AAA and 4 lower-level pitching prospects who I believe have a legitimate chance to either rise up prospect rankings or eventually carve out a role at the major league level. Let's start with AAA pitchers. Josh White is a 25-year-old right-handed relief pitcher ranked as the 53rd best prospect in the Marlins system according to Fangraphs. While he isn't a starting pitcher and he's on the older side as far as prospect goes, his elite chase rate, K percentage, and SKUBAL make it too hard to ignore. White doesn't have elite fastball velocity, and his curveball and slider don't have particularly high spin rates. However, his extremely high arm angle fools hitters and causes them to struggle to distinguish between his fastball and breaking pitches. This offseason, the Marlins decided to protect White from the Rule 5 draft, adding him to the 40-man roster. Given the Marlins' belief in White, I'd expect him to be coming out of the Marlins bullpen at some point in 2026. Sticking with Marlins prospects, Robbie Snelling is a 22-year-old left-handed starting pitcher ranked 4th in the system. Snelling is likely the highest profile prospect on this list, but it's difficult not to talk about him given his incredible swing and miss profile. After a great start to 2025 in AA, Snelling was nearly untouchable in AAA. In over 60 innings, Snelling had a strikeout rate of 33.3% and a SKUBAL of 46.87, which, for an MLB comparison, would have placed him between Christopher Sanchez and Paul Skeens. Snelling led all minor league southpaws with 166 strikeouts in 2025. Snelling's best pitch is his fastball, which is comparable to Tanner Scott's, getting 16.7 inches of induced vertical break, nearly 6 inches of arm side run, and just over 6 feet of extension during his delivery. Like Josh White, Snelling will likely be pitching for Miami at some point in 2026. Troy Melton is a 25-year-old starting pitcher ranked as the Tigers' 5th best prospect. While in both AAA and his brief MLB stint, he allowed loud contact, he posted elite swing and miss stuff. In the MLB, Melton was extremely successful at pitching to a 2.76 ERA over 45 innings. Furthermore, Melton showed that he can pitch at the highest stage, allowing just 1 run over 8 innings in the ALDS against the Mariners. Despite this, his O-swing percentage fell by about 10 percentage points and his FIP was 4.6, well above his ERA. I'm betting on Melton's stuff to lead to increased swing and miss stuff and a larger sample size in 2026, with all 6 of his pitches posting above average stuff plus. In 2025, Melton had a 29.7% whiff rate on his four-seam fastball, well above the 21.7% average in MLB. He'll need to improve upon his 29.3% whiff rate on his slider, his secondary pitch, below the league average of 33%. Still, I expect Troy Melton to build upon his brief success from last year heading into 2026. My last AAA prospect is Ethan Pecco, a 23-year-old starting pitcher ranked 9th in the Astros system. After winning the Astros Minor League Pitcher of the Year award in 2024 and pitching his way into a AA rotation spot, Pecco's 2025 debut was delayed until June, but he still managed to make his way to AAA and succeed at the level in 35 innings. Pecco doesn't possess otherworldly hit-and-miss stuff, with a relatively pedestrian SKUBAL. However, he has a very high called strike percentage of 17.4%. As a result, Pecco's elite command allowed him to achieve a fantastic 23.8% strikeout-minus-walk rate, despite unexceptional hit-and-miss stuff. His best pitch is a fastball, which is a whiff rate above 30%, but he still lacks an elite put-away pitch, which is also limited at his O-swing percentage and therefore his SKUBAL. If Pecco can develop a plus put-away weapon, I would not only expect him to make the MLB in 2026, but also to have success. Let's now turn to the single-A prospects. Kelvis Salcedo is a 19-year-old right-handed starting pitcher ranked as the 20th best prospect in the Tigers system according to Fangraphs. After impressing in the Florida Complex League, Salcedo got called up to Low-A Lakeland. In a small sample size of 23 1/3 innings, Salcedo was dominant, posting a strikeout-minus-walk rate of 30.9%. Salcedo has a four-seam fastball that typically sits in the 93 to 96 mile/hour range, producing good spin and arm side action. His slider has a 55.6% whiff rate in low A, while his changeup, which he threw 13% of the time, had a 60% whiff rate and a ridiculous 0.13 xwOBA against. Salcedo still has a long way to go before sniffing the major leagues, but he's someone who I feel confident will be rising up prospect boards in the near future. Bishop Letson is a 21-year-old starting pitcher ranked 5th in the Brewers system according to Fangraphs. Letson's 2025 was relatively short, limited to just 37 innings in High A and 1 4-inning start in AA due to a shoulder injury. Since he pitched in High A and AA, we don't have Statcast data to use. However, looking at his advanced and traditional stats, there's a lot to like. He had a strikeout-minus-walk rate of just under 24% in High A, a ground ball rate of 54%, a 1.69 ERA, and a 2.26 FIP. Letson is a 6'4" right-hander with elite extension, making his fastball play harder than its actual reading. His low release point creates a rising approach angle that helps his fastball miss bats, particularly when it runs to the arm side. He pairs it with a low 80s sweeper that shows above average movement and is effective against left-handed hitters. He also mixes in a cutter and a changeup, though both remain underdeveloped after losing important time due to injury in 2025. The overall arsenal allows him to attack hitters in multiple parts of the zone, and if his velocity ticks up as he continues to develop, he has the potential to feature more than one plus offering. With a small sample size of about 100 innings in 2 pro seasons, Letson is still a raw prospect, but he has the makings of a frontline starter if he continues to develop and stay healthy. Gage Stanifer is a 22-year-old starter in the Blue Jays system who remains unranked by Fangraphs but sits 6th in MLB.com's prospect rankings. He broke out in 2025, opening the season in low A and finishing it in double A. Over 26 low A innings, Stanifer overwhelmed hitters with a 36.9% strikeout rate, elite swing and miss stuff, and a 0.69 ERA paired with a 2.24 FIP. He carried that dominance into high A across a larger 67-inning sample size, posting a 36.5% strikeout rate, a 15.3% swinging strike rate, a 3.2 ERA, and a 2.3 FIP, which corresponded to a 52 FIP minus. His breakout in 2025 has come with a noticeable jump in fastball velocity as he consistently sits around 95 miles per hour. The fastball stands out for its strong induced vertical break and arm side movement, making it difficult for hitters to square up. He complements it with a mid-80s slider that features a tight vertical break with no batter recorded a hit against in the single-A level. Stanifer possesses a changeup which is used primarily against left-handed hitters. While it's generated more swing and misses at high A, it remains a clear third option in his arsenal. The main concern in his profile is control. His 12.8% walk rate across all levels in 2025 will need to come down for continued success against more advanced competition. As a result, 2026 looms as a pivotal season in shaping his long-term projection. Ramon Marquez is a 20-year-old starter in the Phillies system, unranked by Fangraphs. Signed at the age of 19 for just $10,000 out of Mexico in 2025, Marquez already appears to be a bargain. After posting a strikeout-minus-walk rate of around 23% over 10 starts in the Florida Complex League, Marquez got called up to low A. In a limited 17-inning sample, Marquez's underlying indicators were strong, highlighted by a high strikeout-minus-walk rate and excellent chase and swinging strike numbers. And while quality of contact allowed has shown limited predictive value even at the AAA level, it's still encouraging that hitters haven't been making hard contact against him. Marquez added velocity in 2025, reaching 96 miles per hour with a sinking fastball that generates ground balls. He also features a promising changeup that has the potential to develop into a plus offering. Still, he remains a raw pitcher and has yet to establish a reliable breaking ball. If he adds that pitch and improves his command, he has the upside to climb prospect rankings quickly. Ultimately, prospect evaluation will never be straightforward. There's simply too many variables that can't be accounted for, no matter how much data we have access to. As this analysis has shown, evaluating pitchers is even more difficult than evaluating hitters. Still, there are metrics that will provide us with some insights into the potential success of pitching prospects. Outcome-based statistics like strikeout rate, walk rate, and to a lesser extent strikeout-minus-walk rate carry over from AA. And once Statcast data becomes available, plate discipline against metrics such as O-swing percentage, Z-contact percentage, and the SKUBAL metric emerge as some of the strongest indicators that we have of near-term MLB readiness. Many of my breakout picks will struggle if they ever even make the MLB. But this is an exercise. While I'd love to be correct in my predictions, my primary concern is providing insight into how you as a fan can go about evaluating pitching prospects. If this analysis helps you look beyond DRA and prospect rankings, focus on the underlying traits that translate across levels, and think more critically about how pitchers developed, then it's done its job. Prospect evaluation will always involve risks, but using the right metrics gives us a clearer framework for identifying which pitchers we think might break out. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe. It would really help the channel continue to grow. Thank you, and see you again next video.